16.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, this is an interview with Vivian Eagan, New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York. It is the 25th of August, 2003, 1:30 p.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give us your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
I'm Vivian Theresa Eagan. I was born in Schenectady on July 25th, 1922.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to going into the service?
I graduated from the Academy of Holy Names as a boarder in Albany, New York, and I graduated from Mildred LA Business School in Albany.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and what you remember, your experiences or your feelings when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I can't remember. I've tried to backtrack in my mind, and I can't remember.
Okay. Now, why did you end up joining the Navy?
My best girlfriend said, let's join the Waves. And I said, what's the Waves? She said, that's Navy women. And I said, oh, what do we have to do? She said, pick up an application at the post office. I said, is that all? She said, yes. So within the week I went down and picked up the application, filled it out, sent it back. I think within a week I heard from them. And they wanted me to come to New York and be sworn in. And I had never been to New York before. So my dear father said he would go. But the catch was you had to be 21 or 20 with your parents okay. And my mother wouldn't sign for me. She said if I wasn't happy, she didn't want to blame me for it. So my dad, who was in World War I, said he would. So he did.
So how, you were 20 years old at this time then?
Yes.
Okay.
So he brought me to New York. And when we got there and got to go all the papers and all that, they said, what's his name? Vivian. And I said, well, my birth certificate says one thing and my baptismal says the other. So they said they couldn't take me because my name wasn't Vivian. We had to have sworn statements that Vivian and Vivian were one and the same person. So my dad and I went out and we founded a republic and we had it okay that Vivian and Vivian were the same. We went back and we filled out the papers and that was the beginning.
Okay, now you told me something amusing on the telephone about what your father said about you being 20, not 21, and so on. Could you tell us about that?
Well, he had to be 21, as I said. He had to be 5 feet. I was 5'1". He had to weigh 100 pounds. I weighed 102. So because of just skinned under, my father always introduced me. This is my daughter Vivian. She's a ripple because she's too small to be a wave.
Okay.
And he'd always send his letters, dear little ripple.
Now, when did you enlist in the Waves?
In February 43.
Okay. And where did you go for your basic training, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
It was amusing. I went to the Barracks, New York. No, at Hunter College. And I had gone 8 years to Catholic boarding school where we had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, make our bed by 6:30, go to Mass. While we were at breakfast at 7, Sister would go and check our beds, and if they weren't made right, they were ripped apart. So being in boot camp was a cinch to me. It was just a continuation of my boarding school days. And from there, we left New York, and every conceivable miserable day there was. Rain, sleet, hail, snow, everything. We went to Stillwater, Oklahoma. The sun is shining, the grass is green, the flowers are in bloom, the birds are singing. It was like from hell to heaven. So, and then, of course, in boot camp, we weren't allowed to talk to the sailors. I mean, they could sit right next to you, and you couldn't talk to them. We go to Oklahoma. We sit at the same table with them. Oh, and another funny thing. I would not eat with our kitchen silverware home because it tasted tinny. Boot camp. The trays are tin, the cups are tin, the silver's tin, the plates are tin. And when I wrote that to Mother, she laughed. She felt I was going to do a big change. So then we got to Oklahoma. We have Oklahoma. There's maple, tables and chairs, maple. Beautiful floral arrangements in the center of the table. It was so different. The sailors are sitting right, and of course they knew every time a new contingent of boys came in because we'd keep our eyes straight ahead and, we'd glance over, but we wouldn't talk. So then we realized before too long that we could talk to them. Mm-hmm. So I did my airman training in Stillwater.
Now, was this the first time you'd ever been away from home?
Well, no, because I went 8 years to boarding school.
Oh, that's true, yes.
But that's the first time I went away from home that I couldn't see anybody.
Mm-hmm. How'd you feel? Did you feel homesick at all, or?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. And so many things that came up, and right then and there you wanted to tell your mother, but you couldn't. But my mother had been in bed for 6 years, and that's why we had to go to boarding school, my sister and I, because she couldn't take care of us. So, boarding school prepared me for the service.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you get any special training at all while you were in the camps?
At the school?
In your boot camps and so on, did you get any kind of specialized training?
The only thing that was different, we were trained by Marines.
Oh, really?
And we were trained right in front of the reservoir. It was awful. It was a March. It was freezing. It was raining. You'd go to bed at night. Your clothes were soaking wet. You'd wake up and put the same soaking wet clothes back on you. That's all you had. And the Marines even said that they would never have to drill in the weather that they had to drill us in. Mm-hmm. So that made us feel good. And then when we got to Oklahoma and we saw the gobs, sailors drilling, we did circles around them, so we were glad the Marines taught us.
Okay. What did you do after Oklahoma?
I went to Arlington, the Bureau of Naval Personnel, mm-hmm. which they refer to as BUPERS. And they had put up special barracks for the waves. And it was more, I hate to say, more like a motel. The blocks were down the road and they had strictly GI barracks. We had 1 2-room, carpeted floors. We had a bed, a boudoir chair, a regular closet, and a little dresser with a mirror. And the hallways were carpeted. They had indirect lighting on the floor. It was terrific. At the end of each one was a lounge, and of course that was long before television, but we could sit out in the lounge and have our discussions and talks and listen to the radio and things. And right down the road was strictly GI barracks. Well, that only lasted a short time, and then too many waves came to Washington. They had no place to put them. So we had to share our room. And in order to do that and accommodate the waves, they had to have so many cubic feet of air and light, so they had to take so much of the partition off the bottom and the top to have the air and lights. Okay. And then we had to share our closet, share our dresser, and share our little chair and everything. So again, being in school, boarding school, where you had to share everything anyway, that helped me. But giving you something and taking it away from it wasn't very nice.
What kind of assignment did you have while you were there?
My first one was working with family allowance, and if they could fire me, they would have, because we typed up these forms for them to receive the allowance, and you were supposed to proofread your own. I can proofread somebody else's, but my own, I would read what it should have been and not what I typed. It was awful. So they put me in Red Cross and Family Relief. That was wonderful, but it was sad. When you had to inform the sailor's relative of how he was killed, how it was aboard ship, and how it was torpedoed or how it was bombed, and it gives me chills even talking about it now. And then after I wrote...
Now with this, did you, how did you contact the families? Did you have to do it personally, or?
They were form letters.
Form letters?
You know, like the name of the ship and what happened to it. And then after that, I was with Red Cross and the Navy Relief also, but I made up a lot of my own letters. I'd find out the details about the sailor, the servicemen, and then I'd write them my own personal letter of sorrow and regret. But it was hard to do, because you could put yourself in their position, because I had an uncle who was only 4 years older than me, who was in the Marines, and he was killed at Tarawa. So when they told us that he had been wounded, and they let us know, and then they were going to send him home. Instead of sending him home, they sent him back out, and he was killed. So I could relate to all these letters that I had to send. It was so sad. But you had to go on, because the next one was just as bad.
Where did you do this? Where was do you work in an office?
Yes.
Where was that?
At the Bureau of Naval Personnel.
Okay. Did you make any close friends while you were there?
Oh, yes. Only one of which I remained friends with till we started last year.
Now, you said that one of the persons you remember was a Lieutenant Smiley.
I just remember the name, and it didn't suit him at all.
Why not?
He never smiled. Never smiled. Yeah. Said of all the names in this world, that was the most misfit one.
So that's basically what you did for the entire time you were in service. Okay.
But I did take tap dancing as a hobby, and had special permission from the Navy to dance out. But I had to wear my uniform to and from.
Now, did you do this in USO shows, or shows at hospitals, or just entertain?
Wherever. We didn't, it was more for my own, it was my hobby. And as a child, my parents couldn't afford to give me lessons, so that instead of going out drinking and doing things like that, I took tap dancing.
While you were in the service? Okay. Where did you tap dance?
We danced at, I can't even remember, different places that the dance teacher would. She even taught us how to do the hula, and I did that, and I caught pneumonia for having bare feet. And this should not be in print. I made up my own pass to go home, and coming back, well, the sailors were always good to me because I was small. That's the advantage of a woman being small. They always took good care of me. We could be, the trains would be jam-packed full all the time. And I never had to stand. They always made room for me. And one time I even had to sit between the cars, the open thing. And one servant offered me a suitcase, another one offered me a jacket, and everybody took good care of me. But anyway, that particular time, I caught pneumonia, but I had to go back because I would have been AWOL. And I walked around with pneumonia for weeks and weeks, and I was living out on subsistence at that time. And my landlady, that's when my best girlfriend, we had become roommates in this Jewish home, and she was Jewish. And we shared a huge bedroom. The bedroom was bigger than this room. And anyway, she and the landlady kept telling them that I was sick. And they kept saying, send her in. So finally one day the landlady said, if you don't think she's sick, you come out and check her, because I'm not going to be responsible for her. And that's when they sent me to Bethesda Hospital. And I did have walking pneumonia. But there, it was during the time of polio, and there was a gal in there who had polio, and of course we couldn't go near her, so we'd go walk by her room and we'd stand at the door and talk to her. She was the sweetest, most. She hated to ask anybody anything. And then she got better well enough that we could go in her room. And she said to me, would you please move this tray? She said, I can't turn and I don't want to ask the pharmacist maid to. Now that's how sweet she was. Then there was this other gal that she wanted her, she didn't say to me, oh, she complained about everything, and she had an elevation. The rest of us had temperatures, but she had elevation. That's the type. So when you compare the two, the one that had everything in the world to complain about never did, and this other one had nothing. She was like we with pneumonia. She complained. So it just shows you different types of people in this world.
Yes. Do you remember, you were obviously in the Washington area when President Roosevelt died. Do you remember the reaction to his death?
I think even people that probably weren't in favor of him felt badly. But he certainly did a lot for this country. I had a cousin that was in the CCCs, and I still have the toothbrush holder that was his, the metal toothbrush. And when I go through the airport, it's forever clicking off. I forget about it. So now I leave it in my handbag so I can just show them what it is. But they had metal soap dishes and metal toothbrush holders. And that was such a wonderful thing to do for these young fellas, but for our country too. Because it helped put us back on our feet. Why we can't devise things like that today.
How did you feel when you heard about the VE Day? How did you feel when you heard about the surrender?
Oh, jubilant. Very excited.
How about the surrender of Japan? The same?
Oh, yes.
How do you remember reaction to the dropping of the atomic bombs on Japan?
Not really, no.
Okay. returned home in 1946. What did you do after you were discharged?
Well, I was pregnant, so
Oh, you were married?
Yeah.
When did you get married?
While we were in service.
Mm-hmm. Now, was your husband in the military too? Or?
He was in the Navy.
Navy also.
But it wasn't one of those love stories, being in the Navy and seeing the world. We lived on the same street. And our sisters palled around together.
Oh, so he was from the same area you grew up then? You knew him from...
The same street.
Okay. Did you ever keep in contact with anyone that you served with?
This one gal,
Mm-hmm.
my roommate, when we were in service, we had made a pact that if we went out together, we came home together.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go to USOs, if somebody, will say, if asked me if I'd like to go out someplace after, and I'd ask him if he had a buddy. If he didn't, I said, no, I have my girlfriend and we stick together.
Mm-hmm.
If he did, then we're the four of us. And then when we'd introduce ourselves, say our name, and as soon, now she looked Italian, and as soon as she said her name was Goldstein, you could see the faces change. My heart ached for her so often, thinking of what she must go inwardly because they realized she was Jewish. And she was the same person that she had talked to them before they knew her name. It's awful that people are so biased.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever make use of the GI Bill at all?
No. My husband did, but I didn't.
How about the 52-20 Club? Did you ever, you or your husband make use of that?
No.
Okay. Did you join veterans organizations?
Not then. I've been in the American Legion now since 1988,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been their chaplain most of that time. In fact, last night we went to a Legionnaires' week, and I read the prayers.
How do you think your time in service affected or changed your life?
It made me appreciate my life. It made me appreciate the country I live in.
Mm-hmm.
When I joined, I can't say I joined because I was patriotic. I wanted to help out, but I also wanted the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
But after I was in and I had to send those terrible, sad letters to people, then I realized that I really wanted to be patriotic.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were young enough today and could join, it would be for patriotism. Because we never went to war. We never participated like the women of today do.
Do you have some photographs to show us? Would you show us your first one in uniform?
That's the only one I have, the uniform one. Yeah.
If you hold it up to the camera, Wayne can focus on that.
Okay, and what year was that taken?
You can hold it closer.
Just
He can,
just
if
hold
you
it.
say right there, he can focus on it.
Yeah. And what year was that taken? Do you remember?
1944
Okay.
at Annapolis.
Okay.
Now, you had an example of mail that you wanted to show us too? If you just hold that up too. What is that?
That's a email to my uncle that was in the Marines.
Okay, I got it.
Now, you told us about something you do today that's kind of connected with the VA hospitals. What was that?
Every VA hospital has anyone that's treated in a VA hospital can participate in the VA Creative National Arts Festival, And that either with art material, whatever it may be. One fella had a piece of wood about this big, but it was all different kinds of wood, and every type of wood was symbolic of a phase of his life as a prisoner of war. Every different color wood was different. That was so unique and so touching. And but anyone can, any kind of talent that you have, you can enter. And unfortunately, they can't. Everyone that receives a gold medal, they don't choose to send to the festival. But if you are, it's awesome. It's very emotional, very emotional.
Now, have you been sent to any of these festivals?
This October will be my 4th one.
Wow. Could you show us that? What is your creative talent?
Tap dancing, here I am.
Okay, and that's you in the lower right-hand corner?
Right here. Tap dancing.
Okay.
The other gal is that model I told you.
Oh.
And last year we did Me and My Shadow. And at a point there I went off and did my own thing. I went ahead of her and didn't pay any attention. And then she chastises me and tells me to go in the back. And when I got in back of her, I gave her a dirty look. And just then the camera zoomed in on me, and the audience, oh, they laughed so hard because we hadn't practiced that.
Why don't you leave those out? I want to copy those.
Okay.
Okay.
And then did you want to see
Yes, you said
Jane
you...
Powell is fantastic. With every one of us, she sits down and talks to us and has her picture taken with over 100 of us. And she sits down with every single one of us.
Okay, got it.
And the 3 years that I been in it, she's been in. And this is Bo Derek. She's just gotten involved.
Okay.
These are pictures when we dance for the auxiliary. Do you want him to? I wanted to show him to see which ones you
Well, we'll do all of them.
I got a lot of them. Okay.
Okay.
And you have that one also? You can just hold up and...
Well, I have this one. This is...
Don't get too close to the camera. Just right there is good because then I can zoom in. If it's too close, then it blurs. Okay. And who's that in the top?
The top, the gentleman, when we danced for the American Legion, he sang cabaret,
Okay.
and Helen and I danced to it.
Okay.
And down below is Dottie and I.
Okay. Got
Now, Helen was supposed to go this year, because Helen's a veteran, and Dottie isn't. And Helen had made plans to go to London and take a cruise, and she knew that they were going to be closed. And the festival is has a whole week earlier this year. So the festival was at the 6th, and she wasn't coming back at the 9th. So the music therapist contacted the National and asked if Dottie could go. And so Dottie and I are going.
Now, where will this be held this year?
Oklahoma.
Oh.
Oklahoma City.
Okay. All right.
Let's see. This was last year's. We did, that's when we did Me and My Shadow. We did, this is where she's chastising me and telling me to. He sang for us. And the bottom one is where she's telling me to go back in my place.
Okay.
And this is hard to see. This is how we dress for Me and My Shadow. That's actually on stage.
Okay, got it.
I think that's it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.